It's 3 a.m. A woman calls 911. Her husband, cold, pale, mouth open, dead in their bed. 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his blood.
My husband's not breathing. He's cold.
Okay, what's the address?
282 Willow Court.
282 Willow Court.
Uh-huh.
Okay, what's a good phone number in case we get disconnected?
435 671 1987.
Okay, it's going to be in Francis.
Uh-huh.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
I don't know. I just came in. I was sleeping with my kids.
Okay, I can't understand you. I need you to take a deep breath. What's going on?
I don't know. I was sleeping in with my kids. I just came in our bed, and I turned over, and he's just cold. He's just cold.
Who's cold?
My husband. I turned the light on.
He's not breathing? He's not breathing?
No.
I need you to confirm it for me. Is he not breathing?
No.
Okay, can you do CPR?
No. I don't know how.
You don't know. I'm going to tell you how to. Are you willing to do CPR?
Yeah.
Okay. If there's a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
No, there's
You have one
not.
available? Okay. I'm sending the paramedics to help you now. Stay on the line and I'll tell you exactly what to do next, okay? Okay, are you right by your husband right now?
Yes, he's so pale. His mouth is open.
Okay, listen carefully. Are you able to lay him on the floor or the ground on the ground?
I'm just shaking. I can't touch him. I can't.
You can do it. You can do it. You need to calm down,
He's
okay?
just yellow.
We need to help
Yellow
them.
and white.
I can guide you through CPR. Take a deep breath for me. I'm here with you.
The very next morning, she signed papers on $1 million mansion. And 2 months later, she published a children's book about grief, about losing a father, about angel wings. She didn't write it. She paid someone to. Eric saw it coming. He told a friend. He changed his will. He met with a divorce attorney. And still, he never made it out alive. The question isn't just how she did it. The question is, how long had she been trying? Welcome to True Crime Stories by Cole. Today's case, the Kouri Richins story. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a case, and drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Now, let's get into it. To understand this story, you have to understand the picture. Because from the outside, this family looked like a dream. A beautiful home nestled near the mountains of Kamas, Utah, a small, quiet town about 40 miles southeast of Salt Lake City. Snow-capped peaks in the background. 3 little boys playing in the yard. A hard-working husband. A driven wife building her own business. That was the picture Kouri Richins wanted the world to see. But pictures lie. And this one had cracks running all the way to the foundation. Let's start with Eric. Eric Richins was born in 1982 in Bountiful, Utah, a name that almost sounds too perfect for the kind of man he was. He was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He served a 2-year mission in Mexico City when he was young. He came home, built a life, and co-owned a successful stonemasonry business called CNE Stone Masonry. People who knew Eric described him as a goofy, warm-hearted cowboy. A man who loved to dance. A man who would do anything for his boys. He was the kind of guy who showed up, at school plays, at weekend games, at the dinner table. No history of drug abuse. No criminal record. No enemies that anyone could name. He was, by every account, one of the good ones. Now let's talk about Kouri. Kouri Richins did not grow up with money. Her father spent time in prison. Her mother struggled with alcoholism. She grew up watching wealth from a distance, cleaning houses in Park City, Utah, one of the wealthiest ski resort towns in America. She would scrub the floors and the toilets of mansions that belonged to people who had everything she didn't. And she told herself, one day, those houses would be hers. That hunger, that ambition. It's not a crime. But the lengths Kouri would go to satisfy it? That's another story entirely. Kouri and Eric met, fell in love, and by June 2013, they were getting married in the backyard of their Utah home. They already had one son together. Their family was growing. Their future looked bright. But on that same wedding day, that same beautiful June afternoon, something happened that most people at that celebration had no idea about. They signed a prenuptial agreement. And the details of that prenup matter more than almost anything else in this case. The agreement stated clearly that each person did not have rights to the other's income, property, or assets. They would keep their finances separate. What was Eric's was Eric's. What was Kouri's was Kouri's. Except, and this is the critical part, there was one exception. If Eric Richins died while they were still lawfully married, his stonemasonry business would go to Kouri. Read that again slowly. If Eric died, she got the business. At the time, it probably felt like a standard legal formality. A small clause buried in paperwork. Something a lawyer suggested, and two people in love nodded at without thinking too hard. But years later, that clause would look very different. Fast forward to 2019. The marriage has been going for 6 years. They have 3 boys now, Carter, Ashton, and Weston. And Kouri has decided she wants more. She registers her own real estate company, Kouri Richins Realty LLC. She's going to buy homes, flip them, and build her own empire. On paper, it sounds impressive. In reality, it was about to become a catastrophe. Because the same year she started the business, Kouri did something that Eric Richins knew absolutely nothing about. She took out a $250,000 home equity line of credit against their family home, the home that Eric had built, using a power of attorney document that investigators would later describe as fraudulent. She signed his name. She took the money. And she walked away without telling him a single word. $250,000. Gone. And Eric had no idea. But here's where this story takes its first dark turn. Eric eventually found out. Not everything, but enough. Enough to scare him. Enough to make him do something quietly, carefully, and without telling his wife. He went to see an estate planning attorney. He set up a living trust. He transferred their family home into it. He moved his business interest into it. He removed Kouri as the beneficiary of his $500,000 life insurance policy. And he named his sister, Katie, as the person who would manage everything if something happened to him. He did all of this in secret. He also met with a divorce attorney. Eric Richins was building an exit. Quietly. Legally. Carefully. The question is, did Kouri find out? And if she did, what was she willing to do about it? Stay with me, because we're going to show you exactly how far Kouri was willing to go, and how a simple Valentine's Day sandwich nearly became the first murder weapon. Hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss our next case. By 2022, Kouri Richins was drowning. Not just a little behind on bills. Not just stressed about money. She was completely, catastrophically underwater. And she was hiding every single bit of it. Investigators would later bring in a forensic accountant to go through her finances line by line. What they found was staggering. As of March 2022, the exact month Eric Richins died, Kouri had accumulated $7.5 million in debt. Let that number sit for a moment. $7.5 million. Her net worth on the day after her husband's death was negative $1.6 million. Her bank account was, in the words of investigators, perpetually in the hole. She owed thousands of dollars in debt payments every single week. Her real estate business was not just struggling, it was collapsing entirely. And then there was the life insurance. In January 2022, just weeks before Eric died, Kouri secretly applied for a new life insurance policy on her husband and named herself the beneficiary. When you add that policy to the others that already existed, Eric Richins' life was insured for more than $2.2 million. The forensic accountant made it painfully clear, without a massive infusion of cash that Kouri simply did not have, her entire financial world was going to implode. But if Eric died, she would walk away with millions. Now add one more piece to this puzzle. Kouri Richins was not just a woman in financial trouble. She was a woman in love, with someone who was not her husband. His name was Robert Josh Grossman. She met him in South Carolina after he responded to a help-wanted ad for a house she was flipping. She liked him. She hired him. And in early 2020, he moved to Utah to work with her, and their relationship became romantic. While Eric was building walls of legal protection around himself, Kouri was texting her boyfriend that, if he could just go away, life would be so perfect. She was talking about Eric. And less than a month after sending those words, she made her first move. Valentine's Day, February 14, 2022. Eric came home to find a sandwich waiting for him. A love note beside it. His wife had left it for him, a sweet gesture on a romantic holiday. He ate the sandwich. Within minutes, he broke out in hives. His throat began to close. He was struggling to breathe. He grabbed his son's EpiPen and self-administered it. He wrote it out, shaking and pale, and eventually fell asleep. The next day, Eric Richins told a friend what happened. He said he believed his wife had tried to poison him. But he didn't call the police. He didn't confront Kouri directly. Maybe he wasn't sure. Maybe he was protecting his boys. Maybe, deep down, he couldn't bring himself to believe that the woman he married was truly capable of it. He had also, investigators later learned, already told a family member that he believed Kouri had once tried to poison him years earlier, during a trip to Greece. A vacation that, to outsiders, looked like romance. But Eric's family remembered something different. He came back from that trip shaken. So Valentine's Day 2022 was not the beginning. It may have been another chapter in a pattern that stretched back years. And Kouri, she was not finished. 12 days after the failed Valentine's Day attempt, on February 26th, she picked up another round of fentanyl pills through her housekeeper, Carmen Lauber, a woman who had been quietly sourcing street drugs for Kouri since the start of that year. Stronger this time. Kouri had specifically asked for something more powerful. She referenced, in her own words, the Michael Jackson stuff. She meant propofol, the same sedative that killed the pop star. She didn't get propofol, but she got something that would do the job just as well. 6 days later, Eric Richins was dead. And Kouri Richins was on the phone, not to family, not to a grief counselor, but to Carmen Lauber, asking if she still had her hookup. Her husband had been dead for less than 48 hours. We're going into the night of March 4th, the 3 a.m. phone call, the crime scene, and the moment investigators began to realize that this death was no accident. It is 3 o'clock in the morning. March 4th, 2022. The mountains around Kamas, Utah are silent and frozen. Inside a large family home, Kouri Richins picks up the phone and dials 911. She tells the dispatcher that she has found her husband unresponsive. When first responders arrive, they find Eric Richins lying in bed. He is cold. He is pale. His mouth is open. He is gone. He is 39 years old. A father of 3. A man who had never, not once in his life, shown any signs of drug abuse. He was declared dead.
We had a drink together at 9 to celebrate something at work tomorrow.
Okay.
We went to bed. I went to bed with my kids. He went to bed in our bed.
What time did you guys go to bed?
9:30.
9:30? Okay.
9:45.
And then what alerted you to him today, right now?
When I just woke up, when I sleep with my kids, I was wake up and I go back in my own bed. And I just crawled over on his side.
And he was laying in
Just
bed?
like that, Kouri Richins becomes a widow. Now, here is what she told investigators happened that night. She said she had made Eric a Moscow Mule, a classic cocktail of vodka, ginger beer, and lime, to celebrate closing a property deal for her house-flipping business. They drank it together in bed. Then, she says, one of their young boys came in crying from a bad nightmare. She went to comfort him and stayed the night in his room. Hours later, she came back to the master bedroom. And that is when she found him. She described it in her own handwriting, in an orange journal that detectives later found on her nightstand. She wrote that when she touched him, he felt wrong. Heavy was the only word she could find. His body was cold. His face had gone pale and yellow. His mouth was open. She wrote it all down. Now, ask yourself this question. Your husband is dead. Your children are in the house. It is the worst night of your life. What is the first thing you do? Because investigators would later find something else in those journal entries. In those pages, Kouri Richins had written detailed, almost clinical notes about the events of that night. Notes that read less like grief, and more like a prepared statement. The medical examiner conducted an autopsy. The results were not subtle. Eric Richins had approximately 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his blood. It was illicit fentanyl, not medical grade, and the examiner determined with certainty that it had been ingested orally. Someone had put it in something he drank or ate. The Moscow Mule. But investigators later found evidence of something else Kouri had written about that night. The couple had also shared a lemon drop shot. 2 drinks. 2 possible vehicles for the drug that killed him. The crime scene, however, told a messy story, and not just because of what was there. Because of what was missing. The lead evidence technician who responded that night did not enter the kitchen. Did not collect evidence from the basement where the family kept their liquor. Did not photograph large sections of the home. She would return to that house at least 10 more times in the weeks that followed, going back for a letter found on the bed that had been missed on 7 previous visits. Going back for a black jacket with tweezers and plastic inside. Returning again and again for things that should have been collected on night 1. The defense would hammer this later. Hard. But investigators had already found something that no amount of sloppy crime scene work could explain away. When the estate planning attorney who had helped Eric set up his secret trust received a phone call the day he died, a phone call where an officer passed the line to Kouri Richins, Kouri learned for the first time that the family home did not belong to her. It belonged to a trust, controlled by Eric's sister. The attorney described Kouri's reaction clearly. She was livid. "What is wrong with you people?" she said. And then she handed the phone back to the officer. In that moment, investigators began to see the full shape of what may have happened. A woman drowning in $7.5 million of debt. A life insurance payout of over $2 million waiting on the other side of her husband's death. A prenuptial agreement that gave her his business if he died. And a husband who had quietly, carefully, moved everything he owned out of her reach. He protected himself from her financially. But he could not protect himself inside his own bedroom. And now, with a dead man, a suspicious widow, and a crime scene that had more holes than answers, investigators needed to find the thread that would unravel everything. That thread had a name. Common law. Every murder case has a thread. One loose end that, once investigators find it and pull, the whole thing unravels. In the case of Kouri Richins, that thread was a housecleaner named Carmen Lauber. Carmen worked for Kouri. She cleaned her properties. She ran errands. She was, by all appearances, just someone on the payroll. But investigators, digging through phone records and financial transactions, found something that changed everything. In early 2022, Kouri Richins had reached out to Carmen with a very specific request. She told her she needed pain meds for an investor she knew, she said. Could Carmen reach out to someone? Carmen could. She contacted a man named Robert Crozier, a local drug dealer, and arranged a purchase. Street pills. Illicit. The kind that don't come with a prescription. She brought them to Kouri. And this happened not once, but 4 separate times between January and February of 2022. Each time, Kouri asked. Common sourced. The exchange was made. But the last request was different. At the end of February 2022, Kouri reached out again, and this time she asked for something stronger. She referenced, in her own words, the Michael Jackson stuff. Propofol. The powerful sedative that killed the king of pop. Carmen didn't have access to propofol. But she got something close enough. On February 26, 2022, 6 days before Eric Richins was found dead, Carmen Lauber handed Kouri Richins another batch of pills. Investigators used cell phone location data to confirm that both Carmen's and Crozier's phones were near the same gas station on February 11th and February 26th. The exact dates Carmen says the drug pickups happened. But here's where the story gets complicated. Because Carmen Lauber was not exactly a reliable narrator. She had tested positive for methamphetamine in late January, mid-February, and early March of 2022. She had a prior criminal history. And she had an immunity deal, meaning she was not going to prison as long as she cooperated with prosecutors. The defense pounced on this in court. And they had a weapon. A video. In the video, a law enforcement officer is seen warning Carmen during an interview. And in that video, the words that came out of his mouth were extraordinary. Give us the details that will ensure Kouri gets convicted of murder. The defense played that clip in front of the jury and let it breathe. But what prosecutors had on their side was something Carmen said right after Eric died. When she heard the news, Carmen Lauber called Kouri. And she asked her, directly, "Please tell me those pills were not for him." And Kouri Richins' response? No, they were not. Eric passed away from a brain aneurysm. He did not die from a brain aneurysm. He died from fentanyl, the same drug Kouri had just purchased through Carmen days earlier. And then, within 48 hours of her husband's death, Kouri Richins sent Carmen a text message. "Still have your hookup." Her husband's body had barely gone cold. But Carmen Lauber wasn't the only bombshell the prosecution had. Investigators searched Kouri's jail cell after her arrest. Inside, they found a handwritten letter. In that letter, Kouri was writing instructions to her mother and her brother. She was telling her brother exactly what to say if anyone asked about Eric's drug use. She wrote that he needed to confirm that Eric got pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico, and that he just gets high every night. Kouri's defense team said the letter was a fictional story she had been working on. The jury heard that explanation. They did not appear to find it convincing. And then there was the book. 2 months after Eric died, Kouri Richins announced she had written a children's book. It was called, Are You With Me? A tender story about a little boy who loses his father and wonders if Daddy is still watching over him. The father in the book has angel wings. She appeared on local television in April 2023 to promote it. She was soft-spoken. She was composed. She talked about grief and healing and her boys. The internet erupted. People bought the book. They left reviews. They shared it. It looked like a grieving widow channeling her pain into something beautiful for her children. But then investigators served a subpoena to Amazon. The book had been sent, not by Kouri, but by her mother. Texts on Kouri's phone revealed she had hired a ghostwriter through a company. The book cost roughly $10,000 to produce. Kouri stood to make $5,100. Her attorneys argue the investigation was sloppy, biased, and built on the shaky testimony of a drug-addicted, immunity-protected housekeeper. They argue that Eric could have been a secret drug user. They point to a hydrocodone prescription from 2016 found in his bedside table the night he died, a prescription with visible residue inside. A prescription that was never tested by investigators. They argue that Kouri is being blamed for a tragedy she did not cause. They argue that their client is innocent. Defense attorney Wendy Lewis tells the jury that Eric had Lyme disease. That he may have been dealing with chronic pain. That there are alternative explanations. Prosecutor Brad Bloodworth fires back in closing arguments. He tells the jury where Kouri came from. A father in prison. A mother who struggled with alcohol. A little girl scrubbing toilets in the mansions of Park City, telling herself that one day those houses would be hers. He tells them about the debt, $7.5 million. He tells them about the $2 million insurance payout waiting on the other side of Eric's death. He tells them about the prenup, the secret will, the Valentine's Day sandwich, the lemon drop shot, the fentanyl, 5 times the lethal dose, in a man who had never touched drugs in his life. And he calls her what the evidence showed her to be, a black widow. The defense asks for a mistrial, arguing the term is inflammatory and dehumanizing. The judge says no. The jury begins deliberating. It takes them less than 3 hours. At exactly 6:35 p.m. on March 16, 2026, the judge reads the verdict aloud. Guilty, 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 guilty. Aggravated murder. Attempted aggravated murder. Forgery. 2 counts of insurance fraud. Guilty on all counts. Kouri Richins lowers her head. One juror, who later spoke to Good Morning America under the name Laura, described what the deliberation room felt like. She said the jurors chose not to take a formal vote. Instead, they went around the table, one by one, and let it out. Every piece of evidence. Every witness. Every question. And she said something that will stay with anyone who hears it. People were really sad. Because they did not want to find her guilty. They were really hoping that she would be innocent. And we couldn't come to that conclusion. And it was really heartbreaking. Another juror, Christy, juror number 3, said she had known nothing about this case before being selected. She walked into that courtroom with an open mind. She saw Kouri Richins for the first time on the morning of opening statements. She just seemed like a small, frail woman, Christy said. It made me sad. But the evidence changed everything. And Christy said she is confident, absolutely confident, they made the right call. The jury also confirmed something significant in their written verdict form. They unanimously agreed that Eric Richins was murdered for financial gain. That the fentanyl was administered in a lethal amount, deliberately, by someone who wanted him dead. The foreman signed the paper. The judge sealed it. And just like that, it was over. But not entirely. Sentencing is scheduled for May 13, 2026. Eric Richins was born on May 13, 1982. It would have been his 44th birthday. Kouri Richins faces 25 years to life in prison without parole on the aggravated murder charge alone. And she still faces 26 additional felony charges: mortgage fraud, money laundering, forgery, bad checks, in a completely separate financial crimes case that hasn't even gone to trial yet. Her attorneys have 30 days after sentencing to file an appeal. They have not yet confirmed whether they will. But in cases this complex, with this much contested evidence, appeals are almost always coming. 3 boys, Carter, Ashton, and Weston, are now in the custody of Eric Richins' family. A juvenile court made that decision in November 2024. They lost their father to murder. They will grow up knowing their mother is in prison for it. Whatever healing looks like for those 3 kids, it is going to be a long, long road. And the questions that remain. No witness, not one of more than 40 called by the prosecution, ever testified to exactly how Kouri Richins got 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl into her husband's body. The method of delivery was never proven directly. The hydrocodone prescription from his nightstand was never tested. The hundreds of deleted messages between Kouri and Carmen Lauber, gone from both their phones, may never be fully recovered. And Eric Richins, the goofy cowboy who loved to dance, who quietly built legal walls around himself because he was afraid of the woman sleeping beside him, Eric never got to tell his side of the story. He left clues. He took precautions. He told a friend. And still, he never made it out. That is the truth at the center of this case. Not the money. Not the book. Not the debt or the affair or the courtroom drama. The truth is that a man was afraid in his own home. And nobody saved him in time. Music slowly fades to near silence. That is the story of Eric and Kouri Richins. A case that is still not fully closed. Sentencing is coming, appeals may follow, and 26 more felony charges are still waiting in the wings. If this story moved you, if it made you think, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss a case on True Crime Stories by Cole.